All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome. I thank you. My music skills, that's my other part-time job here at Cyber Collective. I'm the in-house DJ. I'm so happy to see so many familiar names in the chat. For those of you that are returning, you already know that this is not our normal platform that we use. So through the course of this session, if there are any technical difficulties, please bear with us and let us know at the end of this how you enjoyed this platform versus what we've used before, which is Zoom. So thank you everybody for being here. I'm Tazeen Khan, CEO and founder of Cyber Collective, joined with the incredible team who will be chiming in at different parts and during the chat. I have next to me our head of ethics, Caroline Sue, which I'm so thankful for. And then we have Vanessa, Farah, and Rebecca, and you'll be able to talk to them through the chat. So I'm going to give a little bit of information about Demio real quick, because in the past, we've been able to kind of all engage at certain points. I have the ability to give access to folks' microphone and camera access. So what we'll do is, if you can go ahead and type in, if you want to say something in the chat, if you have a specific question, I can enable your microphone access and camera access if you want camera access. And if we'll open it up to the entire floor during our Socratic session. So we're super, super excited. Tonight's research topic, we are going to be exploring harmful bias within social media with AdoreMe. So there's some tea that is going down that we are talking about and breaking down today. AdoreMe was featured in a Washington Post / The Lily article, which we'll dive in a little bit. But that's really what preempted this entire collaboration and wanting to hear their stories about what they experienced related to harmful bias within social media. So who we are. Cyber Collective is a community-centered research organization. Like I said, we educate the public in order to center marginalized voices in the data ethics dialogue. And we do that by assessing their knowledge and then gathering input to influence change, which is exactly what we're doing today. And what we're about, we always like to share these rules of engagements, which is authenticity, inclusivity, and community. So you're free to show up as you are. You don't have to code switch. This is a very safe space. And with that, authenticity means we all need to respect each other's safe spaces and boundaries. Inclusivity is super important to us. So if there are any particular boundaries or ways that you like to be addressed, please share that in the chat so we can make sure to respect it. And then community obviously is super important to us. We're a community-centered organization, so it's community or nothing on our end. And then this is something new that we're introducing. So those are our OG, CyCo goers. We are setting up our creative research sessions a bit more formally. So same thing as normal. We're going to be educating you on a specific topic, and that's something that our head of ethics, Caroline, will be walking us through today. And then the assessment period, our goal in this research is to really understand if you're actually retaining this information, and that will better help us position this information as well. So there will be a set of poll questions that will be launching throughout the course of this evening. And it would mean the world if you could please answer those poll questions. It would be very beneficial and helpful for us in this research. And then lastly, like we always do, we open up the floor to have a real dialogue to see how this information is truly affecting you. We take narrative-based insights and we work to influence change. We're currently working with a huge coalition of advocates that are working on a ton of different legislative practices right now. So our methods are going to be helping that, which I'm super excited about. And then in the future, we're really pumped to be able to help these policies that we're kind of unpacking become better through your voices and your feedback. So that Socratic session is volunteer. Our full event has expanded by 30 minutes. So if you can stay and give that feedback, we welcome it and would love it. So the agenda for the evening, we'll do quick announcements. We'll go through the education, and then we'll conduct our live interview / fireside chat with Ranjan Roy from AdoreMe, Maddie, and Mala. So if you all were able to join us on AdoreMe's IG Live, we were able to hear their stories and how social media, the content filtering affected them. And we'll walk through those stories today and get some insights. And then after that, we'll go right into our Socratic research session, which is just a fancy way to say we're going to talk about it and get open-ended feedback from everybody. And today is also our first sponsored event, and we're really, really thankful for Keeper Security. We talk about them all the time. We leverage Keeper as a team, and they're going to share just a few details around the tool for us. And last but not least, some announcements. So we're releasing our first masterclass, and we're so excited. Whether you want to call it a masterclass or a workshop, we'll see. But it is on NFTs. It's one of the hottest topics. Everyone's been talking about it, wanting to know about it. We're continuously getting so much messaging around it, asking us to share information. So you asked, and we are serving like you wanted. In this workshop / masterclass, you'll be able to learn how to collect and distribute your own NFT. You'll understand the pros and cons of NFTs for creatives, and also the impact of NFTs on creatives and just kind of like people at large, and the background on what the hell NFTs actually are. So stay tuned for that information. If you haven't joined our newsletter mailing list, please join, because we'll be releasing all of the details around that probably in the next week or so. All right, without further ado, Lily, if you want to kick us off and share some information around Keeper. Oh.
My name is Lily. I'm here with Keeper Security. Thank you very, very much for having me here today. As I'm sure many of us are well aware about Keeper. Keeper is actually the top-rated cybersecurity platform for preventing data breaches and cyber threats. So as we may or may not know, 80% of successful data breaches are traced back to compromised or stolen passwords. So what Keeper offers is a solution. We offer the solution to small business, enterprise, and we also have a consumer product for helping people keep their passwords and sensitive information safe. What makes Keeper unique is our zero-knowledge encryption. So Keeper is actually the only password management solution that offers zero-knowledge security architecture. So what that means to the end user is that their vault, everywhere where they store their passwords, everything's completely safe and only accessible by them. So by storing things inside the Keeper platform, not even Keeper employees have access to that. So it's completely zero knowledge. Nobody has access to it. And it's a safe space because it does have the highest security that's also used by banks and governments. It makes it a safe place to store any kind of sensitive information on top of passwords. So people choose Keeper because it has the highest security available. It's also very easy to use. It syncs across multiple platforms. You can use Keeper on your computer, on your tablet, on your mobile device, and you can actually leverage Keeper on your Apple Watch if we're getting a little bit fancy. The thing about passwords also that they're, nowadays they're becoming trickier and very complex. A lot of websites are requiring you to choose very strong passwords. So it's pretty easy to default on keep reusing the same exact password, or perhaps we thought of one strong password one time and we've been using it for 5+ years. But Keeper's here to take away all of that. It has a built-in password rotation, so it will actually automatically choose new strong passwords to take away from that time that we spent resetting passwords. And it also has a really cool autofill feature. So it saves you time by automatically logging you into websites, into applications, and other systems on your computer. So it's very adaptable. Again, there's a business There's a business product for small business, for enterprise. We also have an MSP solution and the consumer product. So it's very accessible and it's very sizable for any size business. And for me, I'm a little bit biased. I started with Keeper 4 years ago on the support teams. We have the best support. So world-class support, nothing, absolutely nothing matches us there. And we're the only ones that are available 24/7. But, other than that, a lot of things that, very intricate things that get into Keeper. But first and foremost, the highest level of encryption and very easy and intuitive to use. But that's all I got. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions about the tool? If you do, drop them in the chat and Lily will be able to answer. We're also constantly sharing information about Keeper as well. We have a few resources available on our website and on our Instagram, sharing how to implement a password management tool as well. So if you need any of those resources, give us a shout and we're happy to help. So thank you so much. And now we can dive right into today's topic. We're talking about some really spicy stuff. So Caroline, if you want to hop on here and learn, everybody. And sorry about the background noise, y'all. I live in Brooklyn. That's just the way it is.
Everyone here is see me okay? Cool. Yeah, definitely kind of messing around with this new platform. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. I'm, like always, just incredibly excited to share this space with you. Today, we're going to be diving into TikTok. We have some really, really wonderful speakers with some very I'll say interesting stories about how their content has been removed from these platforms. And so I wanted to, before we hop into our fireside chat, that's going to be more free-flowing and just a conversation, I wanted to kind of seed a couple of themes that we might be kind of touching on to at least help kind of frame the conversation today. Like I mentioned, all of our speakers have had experiences, particularly on TikTok, with their content being flagged or removed, oftentimes with content from Black creators, from fat creators, and from disabled folks. And so, this kind of brings up a lot of questions about whose voices are being silenced, what kind of power these social media platforms have. But really at the core of it, there are a couple of main themes kind of from a more, I guess, technical perspective. So the first of which are content flagging and content moderation. So that's the whole practice of these social media platforms have, this is a pretty tough job deciding what content is harmful, deciding where to draw the line. But then, we are very charitable, I think, a lot of times in the assumption that we make that they're really trying to do a good job. TikTok in particular has suffered, I think, in the past historically from kind of a lack of transparency, from applying their policies unevenly, from having kind of sketchy policies in terms of which content is removed and which stays up. And so we'll talk about that. We'll do a deeper dive into that. The practice of content moderation really quickly on these social media platforms, just because they have so much volume, they've got millions, billions of users and so much content kind of flowing, it's not possible for them to have people individually review all the posts that go up and all the content that's posted on these platforms. So they usually take kind of a two-step process. So the first of which is having an algorithm basically check for this content and have that algorithm decide on an automated basis whether or not certain content is harmful. And then if it's decided and flagged to be harmful, then it gets usually passed on to a human moderator. So that's kind of the two-step process. I do want to mention about these algorithms, a lot of times they are black box algorithms. Specifically, these are algorithms that make decisions that they flag certain content and not others, but we don't really have insight, particularly as users of these platforms, we don't have insight into why they made these decisions. So this can be kind of challenging because it becomes harder for us as users to advocate for ourselves, and it's also difficult for legislators when they're developing regulation to figure out how to regulate these algorithms because there's just no or very little insight into how these work. So that's kind of the high level overview. The other thing that I want to note is the kind of notion of content amplification on these social media platforms. This is really interesting because you see content that's coming from marginalized creators being suppressed or taken down or flagged in some way. I think it's important for us to also consider what content is getting amplified in its place. So that's kind of the overview. If you have any questions about this, by the way, drop them in the chat. I'll be in there answering questions during our fireside chat and happy to help out that way. So with TikTok in particular, I wanted to bring up a couple of kind of important articles that have been quite troubling. So the first of which is the one that we mentioned about AdoreMe calling out TikTok. We have a speaker here today from AdoreMe who's going to, talk us through their experiences with TikTok. But they basically figured out that they're biased against non-white curvy bodies. No surprise there, unfortunately. TikTok also confirmed that it was shadow banning LGBTQ terms and hashtags. So shadow banning is the practice, and I think many of us probably have experienced this. I've definitely experienced it on Instagram. I know Taz has. And so it's fairly common where, your content gets deprioritized and it doesn't show up in people's news feeds or on explore pages, and you're not really given a reason why. Really, really troubling. There's some weird power dynamics there where, you don't really know for sure if it's happening or not. And there's also no way to go back to Instagram or TikTok or whoever the social platform is and say, hey, my content is being deprioritized, because you really don't have any proof. So that's something that has been confirmed by TikTok that they were doing. And then the last thing that I wanted to bring up was the ugly content policy from TikTok that got leaked. Earlier, I mentioned that they use black box algorithms to moderate their content. And kind of fortunately, we got a peek into this black box last year when their policy got leaked. This is fairly damning. So I would encourage you, if you have time, to look on The Intercept. There's actually a document that says, we are going to deprioritize content from poor creators, from people that we think are ugly, we as in TikTok think are ugly, and it's very, very damning. So that kind of gives a bit of insight into the level of discrimination, silencing, and amplification that we see on TikTok in particular. So just a couple things to think about. Definitely, the purpose of this is to kind of, in our fireside chat, illuminate some of these issues that have been going on, and also kind of figure out, okay, what can we do in terms of moving towards a solution? How do we actually make this entire situation better? So now I'm going to, and then here I forgot to mention, so AdoreMe actually had a thread that kind of went through the experiences that they've experienced after having posted on a number of different social media platforms and their experiences on TikTok in particular. All right, so I'm going to hand things back over to Taz, and she'll kind of kick off this fireside chat for us.
Thank you, Caro. You speak so smart. It's like no matter what you say, you make everything. It's like, I don't know what it is, but I absolutely love it. And I'm so thankful for you sharing all of that. If anybody has further questions or just has insight of things that they want to add, we're going to have the opportunity to do so during our Socratic session. But I wanted to introduce the incredible people that are here sharing their stories today. We have Maddie that's joining us today. She is a public relations master's degree candidate at NYU and a plus size fashion and body positivity influencer on Instagram and TikTok. And her mission online is to empower women of all sizes to embrace their bodies and love themselves, which we absolutely love to see. And Maddie, I'm going to go ahead and give you camera and webcam access so that you can join the stage. I think you should be able to now. And then we have Mala, co-founder and producer of sound and soundboard operator at Locatora Radio. Mala graduated from Tufts University with a BA in American Studies in 2014. And between 2014 and 2018, she worked as a state certified counselor advocate at Peace Over Violence, a local rape and domestic violence crisis center where she provided 24/7 emergency responses and advocacy services to English and Spanish-speaking survivors of domestic violence, assault, and trafficking. She's written about violence against women and the work of women of color artists for the Huffington Post blog, Everyday Feminism, and Vibe. And in addition to her podcasting work with Locatora Radio, she was formerly in the role of Human Development Department Chair and Dean of Student Voices at an all-girls high school in Los Angeles. She also teaches self-defense and empowerment classes for women and children. Wow, that's amazing. We like such powerful people. And last but not least, Ranjan Roy is the VP of Strategy at AdoreMe and is helping drive the DTC women's wear brands expansion into new categories, satellite brands, and a lot of sustainability initiatives. And before AdoreMe, he spent time in a variety of media and tech roles, running a content personalization startup and working as a director at Financial Times. Ranjan earned his MBA at InSeed and is incredibly thankful to work at the intersection of retail, media, and technology at a transformative time like this. And we're so thankful for it. Even in our first conversation with Ranjan, we were able to get so much insight and background. So Ranjan and Mala, if the both of you want to join Maddie on stage, I'm going to keep my camera off because we can't have more than 3 people on stage. So we want to make sure to add in all of our speakers. How are y'all doing tonight?
Well, so excited to be here.
Yay. I'm not sure if Mala is in here and has access.
Oh,
there she is.
There she is.
Hello. Self-defense classes. Like I need that in my life, 150%.
Yeah. They're super fun. And I feel like there's almost like it translates to the internet. We like do our own self-defense in different ways with like how we deal with all this content moderation stuff, you know, so that we can like protect the platform. So I feel like it's applicable.
150%. Thank you all so deeply for being here. Like I said earlier, this is a research seminar of sorts. So while you all are talking, what we'll do, like kind of like I did on the IG Live yesterday when I like called out certain themes that we were seeing, we'll go through the same process today. And then if anybody has a question in the audience or wants to make a comment and talk to these folks directly, just say something in the chat and then I will go ahead and allow microphone and webcam access. But for the sake of tonight, I think it would be really awesome to just share how we all got here. And since we've already shared a little bit about AdoreMe's involvement in all of this and calling out TikTok, and I think if you all don't mind, we'll start with Ranjan sharing a little bit of that background, and then right down the line, I see Maddie first. So then Maddie and Mala, if you want to share your experience and just share your story a little bit, and then also what enticed you to want to join us tonight to be able to share more of it. So I'll let you go ahead and kick things off, Ranjan.
All right, thank you. So my name is Ranjan Roy. I'm the VP of Strategy at AdoreMe. And I'll start by walking you through what happened. I guess just seeing from the tweet thread, it was February 4th. It feels like a while ago now. But just first, so AdoreMe, we are an online brand. We sell bras and lingerie, and our goal is to be one of the most inclusive brands around. And especially, we were the first brand to start selling extended sizing across all of our products in 2013, long before it became kind of standard practice in the industry. So for us, this has been very important for a long time. And yeah, it all kind of came to a head with this Twitter thread. So very quickly, we had published this thread about the kind of experience, the discriminatory things we were seeing on TikTok in terms of the videos that came down. But to get there, I'll kind of walk you through. So my background, this didn't come out of nowhere. I actually ran a startup that was a news personalization startup, but we actually built content recommendation algorithms. So this stuff is weirdly like exactly the stuff I've been geeking out about for about 7 years now. So I'd already been kind of like keeping an eye on TikTok. It was actually this Chinese company called Toutiao before, and thinking about their algorithm was supposed to be like magical. So already thinking about that. And then I work on the social media team and sit in the meetings. And we had started really focusing last March on trying to build our presence on TikTok. Pretty early on, videos start getting taken down. We are used to this, even with Facebook and Instagram. We are a bra and lingerie company. It's reasonable. We understand that, we live on the edge with certain things around censorship. So we were understanding the difference, and I'm not the biggest fan of Facebook and Instagram in terms of their content moderation policies, but they're pretty clear and straightforward, and oddly enough, consistent when it comes to things like what they would consider nudity or inappropriate political speech. That's a whole other thing. So TikTok videos start coming down. And it was one of those awkward things where and again, now this is, we're all in Zoom and Google Meet, our faces are on the cameras, and everyone starts to kind of notice when we're going over which videos are getting taken down, but no one right away wants to call out, like, do you guys see a pattern here? And over time, it just kind of finally, people are just like, what the hell is going on? It is universally someone who's plus size, someone who's not a person of color. It is never a skinny blonde model. And at that point, I had kind of laid low on this because I just wasn't kind of pushing this. Because these things aren't always 100% provable. So finally, I bring up actually that Intercept article that was shared. I had read before. It was pretty horrifying, and as Caro said, damning. It explicitly says in the instructions for the algorithm, ugly. It uses the word fat. It uses the word poor, which I'm not even sure how they're supposed to exactly. I think they say like low lighting or whatever. I mean, it's just pretty egregious. So I bring this up. Everyone is pretty horrified because when you think about it being that out in the open, everyone's like, how is this not a bigger issue? Then also bringing up the fact that freaking Lizzo had already like talked about this. There was articles about it, her calling it out. And there's all these other, I mean, even like there's the George Floyd protest, the mentions about shadow banning of specific terms like around racial justice. This stuff, the thing that kills us is it's all out in the open. So we made the Twitter thread. The weirdest thing is the Twitter thread, we're not that active on Twitter. Instagram, Facebook, they're the main kind of like, Snapchat are the main social outlets for us. We actually originally did this thread more to kind of collect our thoughts, and actually, so the videos that we could kind of show that were very clearly discriminatory, like one versus another, it was an easy way. We actually thought we would be posting it there, so it would be hosted in a nice way that we could share it to TikTok, to our brand rep, to our general counsel, to some journalists. We had no idea. And then that thread went absolutely bananas. It just kind of like, we were just sitting there watching it, and it was incredible because there were hundreds of people all replying, I've experienced this, I've seen this, I feel this. And that was a huge win for us. But also the other thing that really pushed us was, working with Maddie, working with a number of our other influencers, this stuff, the human side of this, I think it might've been an email from Maddie to one of our social team. People are asking when their content gets taken down, we have a contractual engagement now. Does this mean I have to do more work? Do I feel bad as the influencer or model somehow that this is my fault? Which, that even more than anything else angered us, because again, like that is putting such an amount of pressure and weight on a targeted group of people that it's just bad. And that's why, I mean, we felt really just happy and proud as a company to see that kind of reaction when it came out, and just kind of just how widespread the reaction was. But I mean, to be clear, we're here 6, 7 weeks later, nothing has changed. TikTok had come out with a kind of anodyne statement saying like that we don't discriminate, just kind of saying it definitively. They mentioned how they donate to a national eating disorder association, just kind of threw that in there. And I mean, overall, they are growing like crazy. And I'll be fully clear, we still use them. I mean, we have been thinking forever, how do we kind of diversify ourselves away from just Facebook and Instagram and being dependent on them? And TikTok is the place to be. And what I was really excited, so we ended up in this Washington Post Lily article. That's how I met Tazin and Vanessa and everyone. I want this to change. I want this stuff to become more open, more explainable, more transparent, and to meet others that actually kind of have that end goal. Like, I don't want to end TikTok. I don't think, it's not some kind of like militant, this must end. This stuff can be done better. And one thing I was going to post this article. I'm going to put in the chat and then just kind of quickly. One thing to remember, and having worked on this stuff kind of from the guts and the innards of this, usually in the code, usually somewhere, the data is there. The things. So there's this article that came out a couple of months ago. So someone was just playing around Microsoft Azure. They have a computer vision tool you can play around with, and you upload an image. It tells you what it sees. And Angela Merkel, the Chancellor of Germany, said boy in a blue shirt. Now, it's obviously incorrect. Obviously, I mean, because of short hair, you're just like, okay, I can logically see how this is happening, yet it's wrong, and it's brought up, and Microsoft went to work and actually fixed it. And this is the thing for me, I believe, making these things transparent. Kara kept saying black box. And I think this is the key to all of this, is this stuff should not be a black box. When a video gets taken down, TikTok should be every one of these companies, but especially TikTok, should be able to say, here are the exact reasons what our algorithm flagged, and here is why, and we'll send you a report. We'll tell you what you can improve, what you can't. And actually, it's that kind of like gray area that I feel makes this so much worse, because nothing with algorithmic bias is 100%. It's never like every single action, every single thing is going to be flagged or taken down or anything like that, which gives platforms an out. They can always say, well, look, this is there. We didn't take down all your videos. And as long as they have that out, this stuff is going to keep going. And honestly, like, the more algorithms kind of mediate more of our lives, the more algorithmic bias is going to be a problem. So I'm very excited. I mean, groups like this, conversations like this, I think it has to be us as a company, me as a person. I'm excited. I honestly was excited because I thought digging into content algorithms was my own weird thing that I did to the side, but now everyone at our company is talking about it. So yeah, I think like these kind of conversations we really need to push, because in the end they have to be accountable to us and their customers. So
100%.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing and giving all of that background too. That's extremely helpful. And I think that's a really perfect segue. Like, Maddie, you experienced firsthand, even like through this entire AdoreMe situation. And the first is, if you can give some background on what happened, and I know that Ranjan touched on it, but if you could share, like, for real, like, how did it make you feel, and did it also change your relationship at all with how you use the tool? And I know you mentioned it yesterday on the live, and it was so powerful. So if you could share that again, and then once you share, Mala, if you could also share some of those same things that you shared yesterday. The both of you were just so powerful. So please.
Yeah, of course. So I'm just really glad to be included in this conversation, honestly. Like, this is something I've been experiencing since I started TikTok just about a year ago. And so for it to finally be sort of a mainstream conversation is really exciting for me. And to be part of the conversation is also just, a great leadership opportunity for me as I develop in my career as an influencer. So definitely excited to be here with all of you. And yeah, actually, so AdoreMe was one of my first ever large partnerships. Like I mentioned, I started TikTok in just the very beginning of 2020, maybe January 2020, I started really consistently posting. I was seeing my followers grow. I was seeing that community grow. And it was the most exciting thing for me. I was finding that plus size fashion community and followers. People were going over to my Instagram, and I knew right away, this is something I'm going to commit to. I've been in grad school for the past 2 years, but while I've been doing that, I've been growing my social media on the side with the intentions of it being my full-time job once I graduate. So when I did start working with AdoreMe, first of all, it was extremely exciting to me because I had been shopping at AdoreMe since I was 16 years old. It was one of the first, bra and lingerie sites that I got into. And so first, that was really exciting because it was a very full circle moment for me. But yeah, experiencing my AdoreMe video being taken down for the first time was definitely really, really frightening. And honestly, I didn't even realize that from your end, you saw my reaction and felt bad for me because I was really just worried about, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose this brand partnership. My video was taken down. I did, it was definitely a stressful event for me. So much so that I made a second video, sent it over, and I was like, I'm going to post this again, take two, and we'll see if this one sticks. And fortunately, that one did a lot better. So really what I learned through that experience was I had to adapt my content to what TikTok was okay with me posting. I could no longer just show a lingerie try-on video like I would like to. I started to do lingerie fashion videos, so how I would style lingerie with other clothing so that I could be pretty much as covered as I could be while still featuring the lingerie. So definitely just a huge learning experience for me overall. And I've just continued to learn that lesson over this past full year on TikTok. Even so, my content has definitely shifted from when I was first starting, when I hadn't experienced any of my content being removed or when I was really just posting what I wanted to post. But then as the year went on and as I, experienced what the platform took down, what community, what target audience I'm trying to reach. I mentioned that on the live yesterday that I noticed that the fashion styling videos were doing really well with women and with a female demographic. So I started posting those more. So it's definitely just been a huge learning experience for me as to what content I should create to, grow my community and make sure my platform is safe. At the end of the day, my platform is my full-time job and, this career I've spent a whole year building. So the fear that TikTok could take it down one day due to a community guideline violation is definitely real for me. But overall, working with AdoreMe has been amazing because they were never mad at me because the video was taken down. It was not even a question. They totally understood. And just to be included in this conversation by them has been awesome. I remember when I was tagged in the Instagram post calling out TikTok, I was like, yes, this is awesome. So exciting to see a large brand actually speak up for creators who oftentimes just get pushed to the side. I could make a video and post it on TikTok talking about my experience, but at the end of the day, TikTok's not going to push that video to lots of people because it's kind of talking about the downsides of TikTok. So I definitely have it's been a learning experience, like I said. Overall, I do still post on TikTok, but I've definitely had to adapt my content to meet those algorithm expectations and to just safeguard my account.
You had to experience that, Maddie, and that's why these conversations, it's so awesome to see you smiling through this and to say how you so easily adapted, but to know that your content is being taken down simply for being yourself is fucked up. And that's something that is not, it shouldn't be acceptable, right? And I just want to reiterate that that's so much of the purpose of these sessions is to get this feedback, and your feedback hopefully will help implement change within TikTok. And our goal isn't to shame TikTok in any way, as much as I've had a lot of radical views on TikTok myself, but we're using these tools. And look, you adapted to TikTok, even though TikTok did something that honestly, if a dude treated you that way, or in a relationship, if you consider that, like it's a relationship that we have with these platforms and the internet. And we think about the boundaries that we create and how we're kind of like sometimes at the beck and call of these platforms. And so I love that you shared, and we are going to work as hard as we can to make sure that you don't have to keep adjusting your content and you can be exactly who the fuck you want to be on any platform that you're on. And I see Mala's about to throw down. So go ahead, girl. I want to hear what you got to say.
You
are clear. We can hear you. And
okay, you can hear me? Okay, excellent. Yeah, no, oh my gosh. Well, I've had an interesting experience with TikTok, and it's really made me not want to use the platform. I definitely have posted a lot less, especially after a series of my videos were taken down one after the other in a really short amount of time, or were flagged and were like not available to view, right? So I'm a podcaster. That's my main gig. I've been podcasting with Locatora Radio since 2016, and we've been active across all social media platforms. And with the advent of TikTok, now we're also on TikTok. And in 2021 is the first time I've ever posted lingerie content on either TikTok or my Instagram. And we posted lingerie content as part of our podcast as promo for our season 5 kickoff. And what's interesting is that my lingerie content is not what has been taken down. What has been taken down or flagged on TikTok specifically for nudity, sexual activity, or like sexual solicitation is like one of them, which is like so funny, violation of community guidelines, have been my roller skating videos. And it's very bizarre, but like those videos specifically are the ones that have been flagged. And I'm in LA, I'm in Southern California, like it gets hot, like people skate at the beach, people are in their bathing suits, like, but the activity, although it's just exercise and it's often not sexy, like I'm falling, I'm posting spoof reels, like I'm learning, I'm uncoordinated, whatever it is. But it's because but we're still wearing minimal clothing. And I think that is probably what is triggering whatever is going on here. And it's interesting because it's a behavior that is so benign and it's just so fun and is so wholesome, really. And at the beach, and there's a sexualization going on of content that's not inherently sexual. And I think that it's similarly to what was being described earlier about like if someone you were dating were to kind of treat you this way and not let you express yourself the way the algorithm is doing with many of us. It reminds me too of like, you know, when we're out on the street, we experience a certain amount of street harassment, and in LA, street harassment is a very severe issue. And it's upsetting to then be in the digital space and experience not a dissimilar type of harassment. It just is impacting us in different ways, as opposed to, you know, physically, or you know, listening to the things that are said, you know, when like someone is street harassing, it's online, it's a different type of impact, but I think it's still very much a form of harassment because I don't have too much information like about how I can prevent this from happening. You know, it's kind of out of my hands, it's kind of out of my control. And it's a very similar feeling of not having control of the environment you're entering into, you know, and then like you get this feedback and what can we do about it, you know? So yeah, that's been my experience. And sometimes the stuff that I post on TikTok gets taken down immediately, like within 30 seconds. Other times it's taken, you know, a couple hours, but within a day at least is when I've noticed those videos get taken down. And yeah, it's odd. So that's been my experience with TikTok.
Into which videos you see are the types of content that's being taken down immediately versus the types of content that are being taken down after a couple of hours? And do you have any kind of like assumptions about why?
It's hard for me to pinpoint, you know, because I don't think that there's a major difference between the videos that I'm posting. And I've posted much more salacious things is what's also confusing. If we want to use that word, you know, I feel like TikTok is run by like little like Puritans, like little like pilgrims are back there because it seems very like puritanical and like very strict. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, but you missed something because I posted something else that seems a little bit more against community guidelines than this stuff, right? Like I've posted content smoking weed and talking about weed, and that stuff is never touched, and I think that's interesting. So it's really hard to say.
Want to say anything that's going to like give a bias of any sort, but you know, TikTok is owned by ByteDance, and ByteDance is an organization that's based out of, I think, Shanghai, but they have kind of like headquarters all over. And I think that's something to consider when we think about social media platforms. We assume that they're democratized. In other words, we assume that the people have the power, but in reality, with the content policing and all of the, you know, what you all are experiencing, these are private organizations, right? So they really have the power to do whatever the hell that they want to do. Do they abide to certain implied societal requests or asks, or try to kind of favor mainstream movements of some sort? Yeah, but the example of this content filtration and what was shared, right? Like if you consider just the history of, you know, the political culture, I guess I'll say, within different countries, and how that affects what we bring to market. And even what's been really hard, I actually spoke to somebody at an organization this morning called Access Now, and they really fight for digital rights, specifically to stop internet blackouts in certain countries as it is related to like protesting and different movements that are ongoing. So they did some work in Dubai, they're doing some work in Malaysia, I believe, but the government really does have power over that type of stuff. And so it's just interesting to kind of align TikTok's content filtering, hear these stories, and then just consider the political culture of, you know, the owners of TikTok in a sense. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm not trying to, you know, say anything, you know, throw shade on China at all whatsoever, but it's real. It's like, it would be if Bangladesh released I'm from Bangladesh. It would be as if Bangladesh released an application, and of course they're going to censor it in many ways, which Bangladesh is actually one of the first countries that completely banned TikTok because of their censoring. So I think even deeper going into this, the way that certain countries are not allowing access to TikTok because of whether, you know, they don't have ownership to the data or the funds of making money, or it's because the people of that country have exposure to things that they don't want them to have exposure to. So I wanted to share that. But are there any questions in the audience? Does anybody want to ask these folks anything? And if anybody else wanted to share, Ranjan, I saw you nodding your head a little bit when I was speaking. Did you have something else to share as well?
Yeah, I think the thing to remember in all of this is algorithmic bias is such a weird thing, because even with Facebook, sitting in a room, a couple hundred engineers who all probably look somewhat the same or from the same backgrounds, they're not sitting around saying, let's do this, let's go after this group. It's all the way they operate, the way they think, everything kind of seeping into it. And then in the end, the company is just trying to make as much money as possible. So you have the bias coming in from one side, but then the problem is no one actually wants to do the work on moderation, actually justify their decisions. They want as many people to use the platform as fast as possible and then sell ads against it. And today there was a hearing on Capitol Hill again. All the tech CEOs were up there, and everyone went through the same thing. You know, was asked, what about harassment? What about bias on your platforms? You know, we have AI systems, we take down billion numbers of posts, yet the Capitol insurrection still happens, yet election and vaccine disinformation still takes place on the platform. The thing is, no one wants to deal with this. And again, I mean, this is where maybe I'm trying to be like too optimistic here. I do think TikTok's in this weird place because, as Tazan said, It's a Chinese company, but they're actually trying to really build an independent presence so that they can still make a lot of money outside of China. So they could be more open to trying to improve themselves, and they're starting from a lower, smaller point, even though they're pretty big. Then Facebook and stuff are just way too big right now. But I'm maybe being naively optimistic, but I do think if there's pressure, if there is more of a push, TikTok could be the one that understands that, like, eventually that they have to solve this problem, and actually solving the problem would be economically better for them in the long run. Because imagine if there's a place that is safer, is more understandable and transparent, hopefully we would all want to use it more. And that could actually be better than a Facebook or an Instagram or something like that. But I mean, I guess, and I would ask this to everyone else as well, like, do people ever stop using these platforms? I mean, again, as a brand, we talked about this a lot, and we're like, we want to try to improve it. But, you know, it's such a tough thing, because when there's only a few of these, everyone you know is on them. And for someone like Maddie, who, if this is where the audience is, this is where you need to go. But you know, like, is it like boycotting can be effective, or can it not? Are people even willing to do that? Maybe when we all hopefully go back to work and talk to people, we'll stop using our phones less. But I mean, I'm curious how people see this. Like, what could we do to be more effective in changing these platforms? Because we haven't done a great job yet.
Yeah, that's such a great, this is Vanessa here. That's such a great thought that you put out in question to everybody. Because something that I run into with different folks when I share things, it's like, so what? It's always been done like this. What can we do? But the same can be said for a lot of things that have been in the past that are now very different now. I mean, to be, really dramatic is like women's rights. If back years ago we were like, who cares? It's always been done like this. So I think we have more power than we're allowed to believe or than we want to believe. And really, when we push back against these brands or these tools that we use, like, our voices are really heard. And I mean, even Facebook, what I just found out, they have like a responsible ethics AI team. And I'm like, what are they doing? But now that I know, it's just like, okay, cool. Now we know that we can go to that organization, that part of department in the organization, and really push to want better tools, that we use. And I think something that Mala touched on the live yesterday was like, being a woman on the internet is like highly violent no matter what. And the violence comes in very different forms, whether your content's being taken off, whether you have people in your DMs sending dick pics, everything, you know what I mean? Like, it happens to everyone. So like, no one's really moderating the content. Like, where are you? So I think as a woman on the internet and as someone that's trying to make the internet a safer place, I think that we have to remember that we have the power,
Yeah, I love that, because I think that so much of the learning that I've done with my use of social media over the past several years is really treating the platforms as tools. And if the tool is not helping me to grow my project, then I need to figure out a workaround. I need to figure out what else I can implement, because my ultimate goal is to make the platform work for me, right? And I think that it becomes so difficult to try and continue to like adapt ourselves and our platform and change ourselves and our content in order to fit ever-changing standards. And it's this issue of goalposts constantly being shifted, because there's also the reality that the best performing content is also the stuff that's the most likely to get flagged or taken down. So we get penalized for things that we are told are violating community guidelines for the sexiness of it, right? For sexual activity, for nudity. That's a label that's being put on the content. That's what the platform is telling me in writing that is wrong with my content. Whether or not it's the truth about the content or the design of the content or the intention behind the content, right? And so I just feel like we have to do as much as we can to like build our projects, build our platforms, and use multiple platforms and make use of resources like, having a website, making sure that we are putting our eggs in different baskets, protecting our content. I talked a little bit about look into copyright laws and trademark laws and talk to an attorney if you have the capital and the resources and if you're able to protect your work. Because if one day we're able to gain enough momentum to create a POC or women-led platform that is popular and accessible and helps us to do the things we want to do with our art, we want to be able to transfer our work over. My greatest Y2K trauma response fear is that one day all this stuff goes poof, and hours and hours and hours of work and video over years is a lot of it is gone and a lot of it is lost, right? And that's something that I think for creatives, it's important to have a plan B, and it's important to have somewhere else to house your stuff and somewhere else for your audience to go and find you should you get kicked off a platform. We think about that all the time. It's one of the reasons why we, as a podcast, we made sure that we had our website. If Instagram were to kick us off, people can find us on our website, or on a different platform. If, something were to happen, our audience can always catch up with us, right? We wouldn't cease to exist. And I think that that's really important. I also really, I think too that so many of us are maybe even a little desensitized to some of it because this has been happening for so many years. Was mentioned, the violence against women creators online. I mean, who hasn't received at this point a death threat or a rape threat or both at the same time, they love a twofer. And it's awful, but it's also something that has become almost okay, well, this is just part of the experience on here, which shouldn't be. And I also think that, we talked about before, when we report accounts because of hate speech or pedophilia, we're told it's not against community guidelines. They don't get taken down. Everything that happens in real life repeats itself on the internet with this algorithmic bias. How long did it take? How many years, how many decades, how many victims before people Larry Nassar, USA gymnastics coach, was actually brought to justice? How many, literally hundreds of victims and decades later, right? Epstein, Weinstein, how many decades and how many victims before they were actually treated folks who are enacting violence on others, before they were actually arrested or tried. And I think that similarly, we see that women and people of color with the criminal justice system are very easily criminalized, even for self-defense. Women are the largest growing prison population as survivors of violence, right? Women cannot really engage in self-defense in real life because the rates of arrest and criminalization are so great. And every time I ever taught a self-defense class, we're learning eye gouges and hammer to the nose and groin pulls and all this great stuff. And yeah, they're effective and they're wonderful. But at the end of every class, my students would always ask me, okay, but in real life, if I actually pulled out this move on a man, and I hurt him, could I get in trouble? And I always had to be very honest with them. The reality is, yes, you could get in trouble and you probably will get in trouble. And I know women who have gotten arrested, my friends have gotten arrested or who have gotten in trouble or taken into the station after defending themselves after a physical assault on the street. You know what I mean? So there's a similar imbalance that is very prevalent in the real world, and it repeats itself on the internet. So we find ourselves in a bind. But I also don't want to sacrifice myself. I have no dedication to the platform. You know what I mean? If I have to leave, I have to leave, and we'll find greener pastures elsewhere. So I think it's also choice and autonomy. If it's not working for you, more power to you if you divest. And I think this is part of it too, is we power through the algorithmic bias, but we're not divesting. And divesting and unsubscribing is really important. But I don't know how to get a critical mass. How do we get to a critical mass of people willing to divest and unsubscribe?
The quotes that we're about to get from everything that you just is so good. I think there was one person that wanted to share. Chelsea, you had a comment, and we are now kind of running into the Socratic session, which is perfect. It's literally naturally happening. And that's my favorite part about this. So as you all have like questions and insights, like please just speak up. I'm going to allow microphone access to the attendees. And if there's anything you want to ask or say and share, please do. This is the time to do so. And Chelsea, I know you wanted to mention something. And then afterwards, Asa had a really great question that I will copy and paste because we were LOLing at the NFT dick pics for a little bit in the chat that took over, which is so funny. But Chelsea, please. One second. There you go.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Mala, I just wanted to add in regards to what you're saying, because I'm also like, I guess, in the roller skating community, and I definitely have seen where you have some girls, you know, skinny, white, blonde girls going viral for posting roller skating videos in their string bikinis. And then you see BIPOC folks or overweight folks getting flagged for the same videos, probably even wearing more clothes, but they're getting flagged. And there's actually, I'm going to paste in here in case you're interested. There is an Instagram I know who's dedicated to highlighting BIPOC skaters and overweight skaters because, like, I mean, we keep running into this where, like, there's skinny white girls going viral for stuff that everybody else is getting flagged for. So I just wanted to highlight that for you because, I mean, it's something a lot of people in the roller skating community have noticed, that there's definitely a box that they want you to look like if you're on roller skates for some reason. And then they're flagging everyone who doesn't fit that box. So I just wanted to like reiterate that it's definitely not you. It's definitely this algorithm or whoever's behind it is inherently biased. And they've made it pretty clear who they're biased for with the people who are going viral.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That's a great resource. I'm gonna check that out.
Yeah, thank you. And that's actually our newest addition to our team, Chelsea, our community intern, which is so exciting. So thank you for sharing, Chelsea. I actually didn't know that. I'm sorry you had to go through that. I'm sorry for all this bullshit, to be honest. But I love this question that Asa asked. And Asa, I gave you permission to ask the question directly if you want.
Awesome.
Or
well, I
if
just
you
want
want
to say
stay
thank
silent.
you
Oh, I hear you.
to the
Go ahead.
speakers and the Cyber Collective for putting this event together. I'm in the social media space and from the brand side, so I'm gaining so much from it. So I appreciate everyone's thoughts and perspectives. My question is actually two very separate questions, but the first one is, what can brands actively do to protect creators and partnerships? And the second kind of very separate question is, what types of social media content filters should be regulated in your opinions? Because I think, you know, I'm all for autonomy and freedom of speech and all of that, but I also think with seeing all the social events and social injustices that have happened in the recent, well, not even recent, but I just think there's a lot out there that does need regulating in a lot of ways to protect people. So I'm curious your thoughts on both of those things.
From my creator perspective, what I would love to see more brands do. I kind of mentioned this on the live yesterday, but I would love to see more brands really focusing on the person they're collaborating with and not just looking at vanity metrics like likes and views and things like that. I think when people really invest in a community online, that's when you get real influence. You know, like not everyone follows these influencers with millions and millions of followers because, you know, those people, maybe they're aspirational, but you don't really connect with them. You don't really see yourself in them. Whereas, you know, for my community, I really pride myself on feeling like I'm friends with my audience. You know, I talk pretty raw and authentically on my Instagram stories. Like you might not know what I'm going to talk about that day, whatever day you click on my story, because it just kind of depends what mood I'm in. And I talk to my followers just like I would talk to my friends, which some might say is an overshare, but I feel like it's been really effective in building a really strong community online. So I'd love to see huge brands, or really any brands in general, connecting more with maybe even just micro influencers, people with maybe not necessarily huge followings, but have a really engaged audience. So I think that's definitely something that brands could focus on. And then as well as just really prioritizing that diversity. We don't need to see like the same, skinny white girl, and no shade to them, but that's who a lot of brands do choose to partner with. And because those are, who tend to be skyrocketed to the top. So I think if brands did take more of a priority in really developing their relationships with influencers and really choosing people based off who they see represent their brand well, not just who they think would look cute in their clothes, then I think overall that relationship between creators and brands would be just way more beneficial in the long run. That's actually something that's been really important to me as I have developed my brand partnerships. My favorite thing is when I'm about to work with a new brand and they ask to do maybe a Zoom call or something, and they tell me, I follow you on TikTok, I follow you on Instagram, I absolutely love what you do. And I can tell that they actually are a follower of mine, not just a brand representative looking to, just buy one TikTok video or whatever that may be. So I think definitely just focusing on that relationship would overall just improve how, we view influencers and we view brand partnerships.
To take it from the brand side, I will definitely avoid being promotional at all. But I mean, we just try to look beyond the metrics as well, as Maddie said, because I do think getting caught into this, and we do work with a lot of micro influencers because we find they build more connection. And just as she said, it's like, if we want the numbers, honestly, like you can go onto Facebook if you have a good budget, you can buy numbers. Those kind of things no longer make sense, but you can't buy connection. So I think that is something we learned because it's just human, that part of it. But I think also brands should be much more clear in terms of like how they work with influencers, because even how this all came about, their human relationships, defending and standing up for your influencers, I think is incredibly important. Not just making it some purely transactional thing, again, where there's a dashboard and you're monitoring like whether an arrow is moving in one direction or not. So I think brands have a huge responsibility, but it's just such a tough thing because everyone is so dependent on these platforms that, to stand up. And honestly, I can tell you, we all kind of the entire marketing team's like, we want to say something. Went to our CMO. She was like, all right, fine. Like, are we about to just piss off potentially the most important next platform that we're waiting for? But she was like, you know what? Like, let's just go for it because, this actually means something. So I think brands, because again, all of their money is coming from brand advertising. So if anyone does have power in this, it is brands. In terms of like regulation, I told you I can get nerdy about this stuff. I'm posting this link here. I actually think one of the most powerful things that could happen is it's called demetrication, but it's simply removing all the numbers. And there's actually this tool this guy made. It's a Chrome extension. And it basically on Facebook, as you're scrolling through, all numbers disappear, all likes, all like friend numbers, even Instagram, I believe there's one as well. And it totally changes the way you look at it. It's like this like thing has been removed that just is kind of controlling your brain. And suddenly all you see is the picture or the quote or the video or the message. There's nothing else. You're not clicking through to see how many followers this person has. You're not seeing like it completely changes the entire way you experience it. And actually, it's funny, like this is one thing I've been kind of ranting about for a while. Instagram, I don't know if any of you've seen it on your account. So they had started testing it a year ago in India and Brazil, which they always like start testing in emerging markets on things, which is another thing. But they hide the like count. So you can see like this person and many others, but they remove it. And actually a number of people on our team, we've seen the difference. Some people's accounts has started to do that if it's over a certain number. So that actually was one of the most positive things I can imagine. So if Vanessa, it's already happened on hers, that it starts changing because then you're not evaluating something like a scorecard. You don't look at someone's like expression of themselves and say, well, it's good because it got 10,000 likes. Oh, it only got 50 likes. It's not good. And I think pushing it's showed that the platforms, if they start getting pushed about something, they actually will be forced to change. So I think this kind of stuff really continuing to push. I mean, I think it shows that it can happen. Popularity contest, exactly.
Yeah,
please, Mala, go ahead, please.
No, I was on the what brands can do. You know, I think it's important also that when brands are working with women of color creatives, what have you, that they're paying us appropriately, right? And something that as a podcast that we've noticed is a lot of brands will be very straightforward that there is a specific budget that they're working on with us, and it's the Latinx budget in writing. We have a Latinx budget for such and such and such and such, right? And it's fascinating to see. And part of what I think there's this kind of issue that feeds into itself that perpetuates content creators, indie creators, creators of color from growing. When brands are not paying us enough, right, for the work that we're putting out there, and the platforms algorithmically are requiring 3 posts a day, every day, like constantly across multiple platforms, we're being overworked, and we're often being given a smaller budget that is like reserved for their ethnic like clients. So we're doing tons of work, not getting paid as much. At the same time, we have experienced that we are able to sell ads on our audio at a much higher rate than larger podcasts with larger audiences, because we know that they consider our audience hard to find and niche. Although there's millions of us, there's so many Latinos, it's like not niche, like we're not, like Mexicans are a dime a dozen. I'm in LA, you know what I mean? But for whatever reason, from the brand perspective, we seem to be a rarity and hard to find. So there are creators like us who've been doing this for a long time, years now, cultivating the relationships, putting out the content, 100 episodes later, Forbes, Oprah Magazine, Cosmo, LA Times front page of the calendar section, partnerships with the public library here in LA. The list goes on, but we still find ourselves being given these smaller budgets. Now, I think that a lot of brands make the mistake of investing big and fast in the first skinny white kid to go viral, within 6 months. 6 months of viral fame. Brands are investing tons of money at the front end and platforming folks who have not demonstrated that they've earned community trust. And I keep up with the Dobrik situation with the Vlog Squad and everybody who's losing his sponsorships. I feel like there is, aside from the way that because of our bodies and the color of our skins, our content is being taken down, someone like him, his content stayed up for a long, long time, even though there's sexually inappropriate stuff going on there, and not demonstrated community trust, right? But tons and tons of brand money. But other folks, who are doing things on the indie level, who are putting in the work, but the algorithm is not favoring us. You know what I mean? So there needs to be a shift in the way that brands invest in content creators. And there needs to be way less focus on follower count. So much of those followers are bots anyways, So it's complicated, but I think it comes down to give your money to women, give your money to women of color and Black creators, and stop investing so quickly into the overnight, TikTok celebs, because it turns out it's not sustainable as an investment, as it turns out. So and that's why we decided, well, we're going to launch our own podcast production house. We just launched a fundraiser on I Fund Women because we're trying to raise $100,000 in 90 days so we can start our own indie Latina podcast production house. We're not getting the money that we want at this rate, at this stage from the brands and such. So we're just going to go out and get it by these other means, right? And that's what ends up happening is we lose faith in the ability to make money this way in the digital space. So we find other means.
Are being shared. And I mean, so I want to bring it back a little bit to the content filtering, algorithmic bias. And what I'm hearing from Asa's question that I think is super powerful is that these brands need to be a bit more proactive and intentional about their actions. And there are layers to this, right? Because there are things that the brands can do, but then at the end of the day, the brands again are kind of married isn't the right word, but they're like at the beck and call of these platforms as far as how the platforms are distributing the material and the black box algorithms that are preset, right? That no matter what you do, no matter even as intentional as a brand may be, because of the way that the systems and the content filtering and the algorithms are set up at an organization, that we can't work around it. So I think that, a question, going back to Asa's question, right? Like, what can brands actively do to protect creators and creator partnerships? I think the question is even like, what can these social platforms do to protect? And so I want to pose that question to the audience and to you all. Like, think of it, and yes, you don't have to be technical to be able to speak to this, but just like at surface level, like if you were to get TikTok CEO on this panel right now and talk to him or her about, I don't know who TikTok CEO is, but if you were to talk to them and give them feedback about what you're experiencing, what type of recommendations would you give based off of the content filtering that you've experienced yourself and seen? And then the second part of the question for the audience as well that I have is like, for all of you is like, how is this information like kind of making you feel right now? And do you think as like an audience member, your habits will change? And obviously we heard from Maddie sharing that your habits did change the way that you use the platform. So I'll leave it to you all to answer that. And then we'll probably wrap shortly after, but thank you all for just participating. We appreciate it deeply. Polite. Do you want?
I guess I can tie those two together, because what I would say is like, creators are going to go where the audience is, brands are going to go where the audience is, and the platform is only going to get paid by the based on owning the audience. So we have the power. When you say how are we going to change, we as not as the creator, not as a brand, as users, still have the power here. And I think that's like the thing that gets the attitude. And I think this has changed massively. So again, I was building this app in like 2014 to 2016 or 2017. So when Trump started, trending up, I was like, oh my God, this is so obvious that he could win because Facebook and just the way the information's getting pushed. And then, it happened, but I sounded kind of like a crazy person at that time when I would talk to my friends, and I deleted my Facebook account, and my parents are like, what's wrong with you? Is everything okay? But 4 or 5 years later, now the conversation, there's a lot more people think something is wrong, but people still feel uncomfortable doing something about it. But again, that's progress. That's a huge amount of progress. The idea that we're sitting here talking about this, again, like 2 or 3 years ago, the average person, if they give you a piece of news and you ask, where did you find it? They would say Facebook and not be embarrassed. Now, if you ask someone, like, oh, where'd you hear that? They're not going to probably say Facebook right away. Or even if they did, they'll kind of like, they're not going to proudly say it. So it's progress. So how do we keep that going? How do we and again, it's our habits that have to change, and I actually am not sure, because TikTok had the CEO is really weird. He only lasted 3 months. He came up from Disney. Something happened. That's a whole other thing. I'm not sure who the current CEO is, but if their numbers start going down, they'll change, whatever. They'll freak out and they'll change instantly. Again, Instagram, it's the backlash that has led to them doing stuff like hiding the likes. So I think our habits actually will drive whatever is the most powerful thing that can take place.
Like perfect internet world, I would want filters on demographics, as in like who can see my videos. If I could just turn on a few filters that say only women, don't push my videos to men. Like, that would be my perfect world. I know that that's, very far-fetched and probably would never happen. But if I could talk to the TikTok CEO, I would definitely let them know that that is something that would really just change everyone's view on the platform, especially when it comes to younger women. I'm 23 years old, but there are so many young girls on the platform who their videos end up on the same, older males pages that my videos end up on. And that's honestly very upsetting to me, because that's just, it's not content that should be reaching that audience. And yet we have absolutely no control over who sees our video. It really just depends on what kind of users are engaging with that specific video. And then TikTok pushes it out to that audience. So when my video gets, bombarded with comments from men talking about my body, talking about, objectifying me, whatever they want to say, then it's just a mess, because that video then goes viral with men, because that's who saw the video at first, and that's where the video is going to be pushed to. So if we could get some demographic filters on there, that would be a beautiful thing. But I don't know if that would ever happen, but that would be my dream.
I mean, just quickly, it's crazy because technically every advertiser, that's exactly what they do. So they have all the data, they have that entire system built, but the user or the creator does not have access to that, only the advertiser. So it's, when you say it's a dream and it could never happen, they have all that technology already.
Yeah, I think there definitely needs to be more done about hate speech and sexual harassment on the platform. I also feel that on the part of the viewers and the consumers, it's every content creator's largest frustration that sometimes it's like the throwaway posts and the memes and the less sophisticated content that we don't spend as much time on is what, for whatever reason, gets pushed harder and gets more engagement. And it's very bizarre. I also think there's this dynamic of, now more than ever, there's really no such thing as bad press. People get hated into stardom, and people get hated into viral fame. And I have to believe that platforms have something to do with that as well. And it gets to a place where it becomes very dangerous, because you have folks like, when I think of Latinx people who have used the platform for nefarious purposes, I think of Tekashi 6ix9ine, and how this is somebody who, checks all the bad boxes, all of them. But he's been launched into viral, long-lasting fame and legitimate stardom and wealth, in spite of really heinous behavior towards minors, right? And acts of sexual violence. And so I think the examples are endless. It's every other day there is someone who has demonstrated bad behavior on the apps and off. And a combination of the audience and the views and the engagement and the way that the platform engages with that is propelling the wrong folks. And platforming the wrong people. And again, it's not sustainable. We do this weird up and down with the folks that are getting the most reach. And it's exhausting. And so, yeah, there needs to be, I don't know how we engage with audiences to get people to divest from folks who are doing outright harm on the platforms.
These larger platforms are really struggling with, that we saw during the elections, and certain powerful people sharing narratives and messages that perhaps is the spread of misinformation and disinformation, which is an entirely other topic of its own. But the themes that I'm really hearing from all of you and your feedback is that there's a more intimate level between a creator and the actual brand sponsor or partner of how we can communicate these things. I think, in answering Asa's question again of what we can do or what can brands do to, I'm scrolling back up to find her question again, but, what can brands actively do to protect creators? And I think that if there was, for example, at AdoreMe, as you guys enroll certain influencers to be able to give I don't know, a write-up or something to say, hey, we know that TikTok and certain platforms are actively content filtering. If this happens to you, we can be of support, and perhaps even like give something or offer something, like we can give you a consult, or if you're something gets taken off, like some sort of a quid pro quo as a brand to take ownership and almost like lead the charge of, hey, platform, we know that you're content filtering, but as a brand, we don't believe in that, and we're going to continue to protect our creators. So I think that that's something that could possibly be implemented. But again, how do we kind of like centralize that to make sure that that is the norm? Because every brand works in its own way. And I think that as a society, we're really going through this like vast unlearning and learning right now. And then the other piece of it is, how can we communicate to these larger platforms that there needs to be transparency and accountability in how the filtering is conducted, and then also the deeper effects of individuals posting on the internet. And I pushed a poll question in here, and we are at time actually, but I just want to share that the question that I asked was, do you think you have a responsibility to your own actions on the internet, right? So it's like there's the other philosophy of like, we carry our own agency, and once we put something on the internet, it's on the internet, and it's going to reach those ugly crevices of the internet. And whose responsibility really is it? And that's a huge kind of ethical conversation that's going on right now. Who's carrying the burden of responsibility? And what we've learned at Cyber Collective is that we don't know, and we don't necessarily, we're not waiting to align to whatever people come out with, and we're carrying our responsibility to educate, to assess and analyze these topics and develop research to reach the right people. So I appreciate everyone so deeply, Maddie and Mala, your vulnerability and your willingness to share your stories. It's tremendous. And Ranjan, to be a part of an organization that took initiative to call out the bullshit and, be here and present, and be a gentleman throughout this panel. We especially appreciate that. We love mansplaining gentlemen in the CyCo home, so we love it so much. So thank you all tremendously again, and for all of our participants and attendees for giving your feedback. And I'm Taz, and our team is here. We'll stay on for any further questions, but don't get got, y'all. Stay CyCo. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. This was awesome.
Awesome. Bye.
Just for a few more minutes, especially because we talked about some intense stuff that were kind of like trigger warning oriented. So if there's anything that anyone needs to get off their chest, we're here for you. And we'll be a bit better ahead of time to potentially kind of let you know that maybe those things are coming up, especially as we talk about content and how intimate it is and what we're experiencing. But we appreciate everyone.
Touched on by Mala, but we didn't get like too deep into it. This could be like a whole other event in itself. How I've noticed social media and the internet in general, it's always censoring survivors or victims when they try to tell their story, but then it doesn't censor the brutal comments of men basically contributing to the harassment and further contributing to rape culture. And then we just continue to see this mindset in the men, surrounding harassment and rape, and just their negative views towards victims, and how they never believe women and this and that. And I definitely think this censoring contributes to that a lot, because why are you censoring victims just honestly trying to share their story and possibly help other women? But you're not censoring these brutal comments online, and not even on posts like that, but in general. I've seen so many like borderline sexual harassment comments online that don't get removed or censored. And then I all the time see victims and survivors getting censored. I just wanted to throw that in there.
Thanks for sharing that. I have definitely seen very similar things too when I've been on social media, and it's like the very pessimistic part of me, which I mean, I guess that's a big part of me, but the pessimistic part of me is like, wow, okay, so social media is really part of this larger system that like just reinforces that narrative about victims and the perpetrators of these things. And it's just, you know, along with the rest of like media and what's in our education system and how women get treated in the justice system. It's like social media is just like a cog in that entire machine. I think that's really, really unfortunate. And I think another thing that I really want to touch on too is like the ways that content moderation happens too is like the most inflammatory stuff, like the worst stuff gets taken down, but everything like approaching the worst stuff is like allowed to stay up. So like all those comments that are really, really awful towards women and survivors, like they are allowed to stay up because it drives engagement on these platforms, which is like that's like the flip side. That's like the mechanics of why that exists. It's just, it drives engagement and it's unfortunate.
Part of kind of the predictive programming that exists within these tools as well. And like Mala had mentioned, there's no bad press. And so, and like you mentioned too, Caroline, and I think that it is definitely important to divvy out censoring versus content filtering, because I think that they're kind of two different things in how content filtering is a form of censoring, I think, but censoring kind of takes a whole other level of approach and like research, I believe, because the content filtering is kind of yes, exactly, with two different goals and can be used in two different ways, right? So anyway, I appreciate everybody so much for being here. I think that we have a lot for our brief, Caro. This is going to be incredible for next month with all of the different elements and feedback. And this is going to be a wonderful prototype for us to take to TikTok and try to help them be better. So thank you all. Have a wonderful night, and I will talk to you soon.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.